If you get bored and happen to research the greatest villains in all of literature online, you would find that on absolutely every list is Lord Voldemort in the Harry Potter series. If you've not read them, I suggest you indulge yourself, and I will not give away anything vital in these few minutes. What I will say is that J.K. Rowling has given her famed villain a really significant name. Voldemort, translated from French, means flight from death. Embedded in his name is the idea that he is motivated primarily by fear of what he cannot control. And it is from this fear that he derives the permission to do terrible things to other people. Such is the awe-inspiring power of fear. Most of our famous literary works explore this theme, fear, and how it is our own worst enemy. Our Torah is actually among the works that explore this, especially in Ava's Torah portion. This part of the Torah is, in many ways, a meditation on how fear disguises itself, what fear in disguise makes people do, and ultimately how people rip off that disguise and rise above its clutches. Who is afraid in our Torah? First of all, the entire enslavement of our people is a reaction to Pharaoh's fear. Pharaoh is afraid that he is vulnerable and not as all-powerful and all-important as he wishes to be. He is afraid that people living within his borders will demonstrate that by rising up against him, and so he enslaves them. And every action he takes following this first fearful step is an echo of that moment. Out of fear, disguised as strength, Pharaoh becomes toughened. He closes off, he builds walls, he becomes hardened. The text says over and over again that famous line that Pharaoh's heart became hardened. Moses is also afraid. His fear is not about losing power. He has none to lose. Rather, he dreads being ineffective. He dreads that he will look foolish or somehow be marginalized, that the people he's speaking up to won't listen to him. The repercussions, he almost doesn't answer God's call because he is so afraid that people and Pharaoh won't listen to him. Moses' fear masquerades as humility and modesty, and it nearly dooms an entire people. And the Israelites are also afraid. They are afraid to get their hopes up. They've been so downtrodden for so long that when Moses finally does come to them with this news that God is paying attention to their cries, they initially dismiss him. The narrative of the pain of slavery is way too loud for them to hear Moses at first. They simply don't believe that their reality can change. The Israelites' fear is disguised as cynicism, or perhaps less cynically, realism. But the genius of our Torah is that in each of these instances, each of these masks is ripped off in the end and laid bare by the dramatic events that unfold and the might and the partnership between human beings and God, which is the essence of our Jewish story. For Pharaoh, his show of strength is exposed as nothing more than foolishness and desperation. The plagues he and his people endure, all those 10 plagues we remember on Passover, is a reflection of the ugliness of the tolerance for injustice they harbor in their midst. His violent power is meaningless in the face of divine truth. And all the walls he tried to build, enslavement and the hardening of his heart, it is those walls of water of the Red Sea that are his end. They crumble right on top of him, just as his violent policies do. For Moses, his show of modesty is ultimately intolerable, even to himself, when he realizes the urgency of the moment. He overcomes his fear by reaching out for his brother, Aaron, and for guidance from God. No sense of humility, no inferiority is as important as the cries of his people in pain. Moses builds bridges to those in his life who can help and inspire him, and through them he summons the courage to do what must be done. And the Israelites, Their cynicism crumbles to the ground, our Midrash says, when they look back at their own history, at the devotion and the endurance of their ancestors, as they talk to one another about the past and actually allow themselves to hope again. They regain their faith because of their own story, and so they begin to listen to Moses as a leader. A beautiful passage from our liturgy says the following. You probably know it. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey, and it continues from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom. From health to sickness, and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, from grief to understanding, and most importantly this week, from fear to faith. Our Torah is not just telling us the story of some people way off in our history. It is telling us a story about us, about who we are, about how we, frail and flawed human beings, move through these stages of our journey. That's why the most pivotal act for a bat mitzvah is to read from this scroll. Ava reads her own story today. Sometimes we are Moses, a leader holding back. Sometimes we are Israelites, victims, deeply scarred. Sometimes we are Pharaoh, lashing out in desperation. This is a story that asks us an important question. How does someone move from fear to faith? Whether faith is in oneself or faith in other people or faith in our deepest held values. The answer, our job, is to identify fear in all its many costumes and then dress it down, deny it its power. That is what our Torah tells us to do today. And according to our Torah, when we find the strength to do that, the world becomes more whole. So we pray today, as Ava leads us, may we walk in the footsteps of our people, moving always, always from fear in all its many costumes to faith. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this moment in time be blessed as we celebrate courage today by calling a courageous young woman who has never done what she's about to do before in her life, read before hundreds of people this scroll that she's been studying for so long. This is a pivotal and sacred moment, and we see what happens when we conquer our fears.